Hi everyone, welcome to my tutorial. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. Gonna do the bit I always start out with, which is showing something that I made in my shop quickly first. I made a range of trinket boxes and they are putting a happy face and showing positive side of various disabilities. I've done lions in wheelchairs and penguins on walking frames, and this is a dragon who's got a colostomy bag. I think it's important to make this sort of thing because I do think that just because you've got a disability, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a good thing that's going on with you. It can be mixed, but being able to give someone something that's pretty and includes the thing they're worried about can make them feel better about it. I know this, I've got several health issues myself, and I've also got a colostomy, so I wouldn't mind having this. I think he's a really cute little dragon. And one of my better ones, I very rarely do them standing upright like that. They are a lot more work, but I will do another stood upright dragon in the future, I think. Well, he's in my shop for £35 anyway. So, alright, put him to one side. Now, sorry I weren't on last week. I had a very rare day out. I'm not well enough to go on holiday this year, so we went to the nearest beach to us, which was about an hour away. My mother-in-law drove us up there and I really enjoyed my one-day holiday. It was a lot of fun, but I did post a short video on my YouTube if you want to see me swimming in Crocs. It was fun. So I'm doing this week what I was going to do last week. The week before that I made a cane. For those who don't know, I work in polymer clay, and one of the properties of polymer clay is its ability to stretch evenly, so you can build a very thick picture and reduce it in size and bring it out into a stick, and the image lasts through the whole thing. If you want to see that, there are videos on my YouTube of all previous weeks that I've done, and there's several different canes over the weeks that I've managed to make. So I've covered the outside of the box that I was making with the cane that I did with the best slices. So I'll come in close so you can see it better, like that. So that's all the outside done, and I baked it. I did the inside previously. What I've got to do is the bottom. Now for the bottom, I've saved all the distorted bits of cane that didn't hold the image as well, and I'm going to use them because they're in the same colour scheme and they've got some pretty patterns to them anyway. So this will be showing you a few things. Firstly, what to do with a cane, but also how you can use up some of your end stuff. Now, although I'm going to be making a sheet and putting it on the bottom of this, you can use those sheets for a lot of things. Anything you want to put a veneer over, you can stamp different shapes out and turn them into pendants. You can, what else? I've heard of so many different things where people have taken it and turned it into all different sorts of sculptures. It's the easiest way to start out. The only reason why you wouldn't use a pattern sheet the way I'm showing you now is if you had a complex model, like a model of an elephant, where it's got lots of different shapes and you want certain canes in certain parts, I find it easier to cut the slices, stick them on and smooth it on like that. I have shown you how to do that in a previous video. I haven't shown how just to do a plain flat pattern sheet that you're just going to use over the whole thing. Hi Sperry Hedgehog, I hope you've had a good week. So, first thing to do to make your pattern sheet, you need some greaseproof paper or baking paper. Then you need to, on one side, whatever you want to fit your sheet onto, if it's something big, I put it down and I've drawn around it. Here's the trick that I did not do the first time. Do not stick your clay to the side that you've drawn on. You're going to work on the opposite side. That pencil will come off and stick to raw clay. It doesn't matter so much because one side you're going to put against the thing that you're covering so you won't see it. But it then means that that side you definitely can't use. You can't pick the one that you like, that's turned out the best, because one side's got pencil mark all over it. So turn your bit of paper over, okay? And then I have saved enough to cover over the top of that space with extra paper. You don't have to do this with greaseproof, the top sheet. You can use something else, I will show you at the time, but I'm going to use this way. So basically make sure you've got enough to cover the top.
Charlie starts.
Okay.
She's sorry, but she's too ill to watch the day, but she's sending them out.
No worries, Charlie, feel better soon. Right, so we'll get this out the way. What we're going to do is cut slices and fill that space. Now, like I said, I've got all the decent bits of cane around the outside, so I'm going to use some of my distorted images from the same bit of cane to make up the bottom. And I like to do that with my bigger pieces because I don't have to worry about matching in whether I've got the right colours with the new set of canes if you run out of decent stuff on the side. And this stuff makes really pretty patterns. So you saw what the original looked like, kind of like that. Yeah, that's just starting to get a bit of distortion in that bit. Well, some of these are completely smushed but still pretty. So what I'm going to start out first of all is cutting some slices. So pick a bit you want to lay it in front of you. Now if you stick it to your paper, that's fine, but your paper will slide, so you have to watch when you're resting your hands and cutting that you're not pushing the paper away from you, because it will change your thickness. I personally like to move that up to the top because I've got the space to do it, and put the cane I'm slicing directly onto my glass board so it's got a bit of grip. Now get your tissue blades out. You want to get over the top so you can see properly. So let's move this up a bit. You want to get over the top so you can see properly, and then just cut even thickness slices along the whole thing. Oops. Now you may find if you've got a, how can I put it, if you're not using scrap bits, you've got a cane that's not distorted, you could find that you'll get distortion in the image if you cut on one side, because it starts to smush that side down flatter. So what I'd suggest is you do a few slices, then just roll the cane to the next side and cut a few on that side, and just keep rolling and cutting, so then you don't distort the image. But it doesn't matter so much on this because the image is already distorted on these. So I'm just going to go cut through for quickness. Now if you're worried about whether you're cutting even slices, you can put a tape measure along the side and use that to measure it out. You can get tools that are like a ruler with sort of lines sticking up, so where the measurement line is, it's not flat, it's slightly raised, so when you push it into your clay it puts the marker lines in for you. I've not found them anywhere cheaply, they seem to be kind of quite a bit of money. So I've got some slices here, and what we're going to do is work out which way round you want them all to face, because I find uniform direction looks neater, and you're just going to fit them in to the space that you've drawn out. So, yellow dot that way, there we go, like that. Now it doesn't matter so much on this whether the bits are completely even. If some are slightly taller, what you can do at the end is, once you've got it stuck down, you can come across and shave the top so that they're all the same height. Or you can be okay with a bit of distortion when you roll it out. Those are your two options. But it comes together pretty quickly. Oop. So you can do very thin slices. As you see, these are pretty much almost a centimetre thick. I find the thinner the clay, the more likely it is to stick to things and tear and do stuff I don't want it to. So I personally prefer to work with a thicker end result, so I keep my slices quite thick. The only thing I can say is that you need to fiddle around and have a go and see what suits you best. Right, next one. So, some more slices. And I've not stuck them together very firmly yet, whoop, in case I decide that I want to change what's going next to what, because can you see we've already got a different design in this bit. So yeah, let's start over on this side, because this side's closest to what I've got going there already. So can you see on the paper it wants to move a bit? So you just got to be a bit more careful, it slows you down, I find. It's not terrible. If you've not got a lot of space, you can work on the greaseproof paper. When I first started out, I didn't have a glass chopping board. All I had was greaseproof paper to cover a plastic board that I used on my lap, and I made it work. So if you're new to claying and you're worried you don't have all the tools, if you've got your hands and you've got some clay, you can make stuff. It will grow over time. Your biggest problem won't be that you've not got enough stuff, it will be where to fit everything and making sure that you don't buy stuff for the sake of owning it and fill your house. It's very easy to do that. There are a lot of crafters out there that really do, and it's something that I struggle with. And I had a mum who was very, very into buying a lot of craft gear, and I noticed with her it got to the point where she couldn't use what she had because there's just too much of it. If you can't get to anything, there's no point. And it can be easy to fall into the pattern where you're not a crafter, you're a collector of craft stuff. That's your hobby. So you've got to be very, very strict with yourself and say, is this something that I actually need for the projects that I'm doing? Will I actually use it? Because if the answer is probably not, I argue you should pass on it. It's not like you won't have other stuff come into your life that can use that space and be more valuable to you. So can you see I'm trying to get some of the most similar ones around the outside edge, and then I will be able to fill the middle up with slightly different patterns. I find it looks better that you're giving it a border if you've got enough. But the original design, I've got a bit left of it, was that. And that was in a different week. But as you saw, where I had to shrink it so small, a lot of that fine detail did vanish, which is a bit of a shame and is something you've got to bear in mind when you're planning your cane out. If you're going to take it down to a very small size, there ain't a lot of point in putting tons and tons of fine detail in it because it will just blur out. Right. Sorry, my brain was on there. I shouldn't be silent. Dead space is not good online. Right.
Hearty Hearty Life says, hello everyone.
Hi Hearty Hearty Life, it's lovely to see you. I'm not sure anyone was around, but if you were, before I got started, the 10 minutes where I leave it live, which is what I do because is it Twitch does not start sending out notifications until you're actually live. We found some stock music that we went through and clipped some together, so now you guys aren't just going to be sitting in silence. So hopefully you like that. If any of it is stuff you really don't like, let me know and I'll pick some more. But I was pretty pleased. It's all pretty generic, pretty stuff, but I think it's better.
Very Hedrick says, that's very cool.
Yeah, I'm always very grateful to artists that put their work in public domain free to use, because it's generous. I know I listen to quite a lot of audiobooks, and there is a company, well, it's a charity called LibriVox. Don't ask me to spell it. I think it's in German.
Hearty Hearty Life says, lovely.
Thank you. But LibriVox makes audiobooks out of anything that's public domain literature, and they've got such a mixed list, and I've ended up listening to stuff that I definitely wouldn't have chose myself, but it's all been really interesting. And they've got everything from sci-fi short stories to instruction manuals and sort of self-help books and all sorts of things, old philosophy. It's awesome. So yeah, if you like listening to stuff and you don't want to pay the huge amount that it costs to actually buy an audio book, give LibriVox a go. And they ain't sponsoring me, I just use them a lot and I want to share. So just making it, they didn't fully, there was a gap that sort of size, and what I've done, instead of having them very hard pushed against each other, I put tiny little gaps in between some of them, and when I roll them out, that will join up fine.
How do you have to like says LibriVox?
I can send my Jamie elf out looking for the spelling if you're interested, because he is so useful. Right, I think I got enough of this pattern to do at least another line down each of the outsides, which is useful. It's more than I thought I had of this sort of shape. And if you see, this is turning out really pretty, and none of it was the designed cane, so it does look very different from what I actually started out with, and that's, it's still good. So don't throw away your scraps, and if you don't like what your distorted scraps look like, twist them on themselves and cut them in half. I did that with one to show last week. So what you do is you get your cane, you put it up on its side like that, and you start to twist. You twist around so it looks like that on the outside, then you put it on its side and use your blade and cut down the middle, and that's what you get. A whole new pattern from your uninteresting end bits. So even when they look a bit, yeah, you can still get something pretty out of them. And worse ways, if you can't make anything out of either of those, you can just turn them into that marbled swirly clay that I make, or cut them into bits and turn them into a different pattern sheet. There's a million ways of using scraps.
Very Hedgehog says, you're always coming up with ways to use bits up.
It's not the most expensive product that you can use in the arts world, but it's not massively cheap, and there's no point throwing it away, especially when there's a million uses for it. And some of the uses need you to have done all the work turning it into something in the first place. It needs to actually be scrap clay, like all of this interesting stuff. If I didn't have distorted ends, none of this would be, this bottom layer won't be possible, and I argue it's going to look pretty as it is without me having to worry that it's not exactly as it was on the sides. So yeah, I think it will work out because it is sofa. And I do find sometimes when I make quite a busy pattern, trying to make sure if I make another cane that I don't make one that clashes, I find it can be difficult. So this is an easy way around that. I mean, I have done it and I have found it helps if you get quite a neutral colour and create boarded off areas and then fill in with new canes. I think it can look too confusing if you just literally go from one cane to another. But you'll see that I did a hippo on a previous week. Let's see, have I got a thicker slice? Yeah. Right, I did a hippo that was like that. Who?
someone called Frontal.
Oh, hi, Frantal. Thank you for joining us. I'm making a pattern sheet. This is the kind of boring but relaxing bit where you just cutting slices and laying them out. Now, I know there's gaps. There are options for filling those gaps, and I will go through them. But you might find when you start out, it will be easier for you to make a square shaped cane or a triangle so that they do slot in together easily and nicely, and you haven't got to fill spaces. But I thought, let's do a round one so that I can show you what I do to fill in. And it's a bit of a cheap kludge. I can tell you the proper way of doing it and then show you what I do, because they're not the same thing. Right, that's a bit thin. Whoop. Let's pull you out. There we go. Right, we're just starting to get into a new sort of shape there. So I find you can pull it off so long as you make them line up so that they're mirroring each other. It looks more confusing if you just scatter them on in any direction. For instance, instead of putting it so that it's orange at the bottom and brown at the top, if I started to do that, you would notice that more than you notice a change in design, I find. And also, it's not so urgent. This one's at the bottom, so I'm just using up my scrappy bits. What have I got? That looks quite good. Let's do some of these. Now, if you find you've got a space and you haven't got something that fits, especially if it's a kaleidoscope, you can just make sure the top's flat. Just start to squeeze the sides so that it's more likely to fit in that space. See, like that. So sneaky squeezing kludge there. Right, the proper way of filling in the spaces when you're doing circles, let's do some of these and I'll show you, because you're meant to fill them in as you go rather than at the end. So what you do is you get the edge colour or whatever bit of clay you want to fill that little diamond in with, and you take a pinch and you form it into a diamond by pinching top and bottom like that, flatten it out so you've got your diamond shape, and then you push that into the space and put your next circle, fill in that bottom one as well, and then put the circle in once you've filled all of the spaces. That's not what I do. This way, making it so that you've got a nice little cup ready for the next circle. It takes longer, but you are less likely to get distortions. So it's up to you. I'll show you both. So, there we go. That is quite thick. Let's flatten that out a bit. There we go. Can you see how it's all locked in properly? What I tend to do is at the end I get the edge bits that I want, form kind of a little pointed shape that's smaller than the space, put it in, and then just use my finger and push it flat like that. So then I can just pick bits off and push it in all the way through till the end, and I find that so much easier and quicker than making the little diamonds as I go. So, but I used to get annoyed when I first started claying when people would say, you'll find what works right for you, because you want a bit more guidance, but you will find what works right for you. I would say try them both and see which one feels better. If I'm being honest, you should start by doing it the proper way, by filling them as you go, because you will get a better end result. But this way is completely passable. I got a bit more of that decent one here, and I got into doing it this way round. To be honest, I forgot to fill as I went once, and I had either had to take the whole thing apart or come along at the end and just dot them all in, and it worked out great for me. See, that's very, very different image. Let's go back to some. There we go. These slices are roughly what I'm looking for. It does help having quite a busy cane when you're doing this sort of filling spaces type. Oh, I found a nice bit there. If it just hides stuff. Make sure your blade's up the right way. Yeah, I'm not fully recovered. I know it was last week, but I'm still doing very tired things. Right, there we go. Remember a previous week I told you that an American state was saying instead of paying your speeding tickets you can donate school equipment, and someone else has taken on that idea and run with it in a way that I'm more impressed with, to be honest. And they're doing parking fines. It's Indiana, and what you can do instead of paying your parking fine is you can buy cat food or cat litter and donate it to a shelter that they are working with. So it's really cute. They've got lots of pictures. This shelter now went from having a real hard time getting enough food for all the animals they had in to having completely big storerooms, and people have been donating that actually didn't have any parking fines, so it's obviously made quite a positive impact, and I think that's a good way of it being used personally. But no sign of that sort of thing over in the UK with us. Our government very much has its mind on what it's doing.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I think people over here would be more interested in paying their fines if they knew that it was at least going to a good cause. There's a common belief that parking fines are very important to the local council for having enough money to spend on stuff that it should have a budget for already.
John says, our cats need to set up a petition and we can all sign it.
That'd be cool. I've often thought about doing petitions. I think if I was going to set up a petition, the thing that I would do as the first ever petition, because it's the one that annoys me the most, is I would make secondary school and primary school uniforms have a reflective strip on the back or on the shoulders or something like that. There are UK, most schools have school uniforms. They love designing them in dark colours, dark greens, blues and reds and greys. And I live in Surrey. The street lighting isn't amazing. And I tell you, these teenagers are haunting the streets. You can't see them. And the uniforms are ugly anyway. Sorry, they are. You're not going to make them significantly worse by putting a reflective strip somewhere across the shoulders. And motorists would suddenly be able to see these kids. Wouldn't that be nice? Being able to see people before you run them over and ruin your life as well as theirs.
School uniforms are hideous already.
Yeah. It will... I can't see the argument behind not doing it, personally. Right, I've got a little bit of space in the middle.
Says we should make them more visible.
So I'm going to use some of these ones that I twisted along the edge. I'm going to use some of them, I think, in that space. So I want to cut that down thinner. So let's slice it in half first. Make sure it's stuck to your board properly. Can you see? When you're trying to take thinner slices of something that's small, it's so easy for the clay to skate and you to end up hurting yourself. Right, I want to take... Right, because it's got a stripe on the outside that I don't want, what I'm going to do is fold that in. Yeah, they really are, and none of them let you get them just from a supermarket. You've got to spend a ridiculous amount of money on them. So I argue, will they be more expensive with two reflective strips on the side? I doubt it. Right, that's what I've got. So let's... I don't understand where the price comes of school uniform. I'm lucky though, I don't have children, so I haven't got to get involved with all of that. When I was a child... Hi! When I was in school, we didn't have school uniforms at any of the schools that I went to. And there was problems about kids picking on other kids for not having as fashionable stuff as others, but kids seem to find a reason to pick on their classmates for they'll find something. So even apparently when you got school uniforms, there's still that sort of bullying. What kind of hair accessory they have, I don't know, that sort of crazy rubbish.
We can get ordinary trousers and shirts from the supermarket. I don't mind, not very much, buying 123-bit jumper, but the PE kit is stupid.
Oh yeah, PE kits. That I never understood. They're going to stay in the school grounds, so they don't need it for identification purposes, and they're just going to run around and sweat in it. Why not just say, this is the colour, get a black uniform of some shorts and t-shirts? It's strange. It's all strange to me, so I'm glad I don't have to get involved in all that. Sorry to you parents that do. If they tell you that it ups your child's grades and how much they pay attention and all that stupid noise, it doesn't. They have not got a single shred of proof for that, because there are a lot of, the proof they have is that schools that have school uniforms have better grades, but most of it is because they're coming from an area where the parents can afford school uniforms, so they're getting a lot more intelligent input from parents that aren't struggling financially and things like that. So
the 10 quid short and 20 quid trousers are plain black with a stupid little silver stripe on the pocket.
£20 trousers. Wow, it's madness, really. It is. Right, I'm almost there with this. This has come together a lot quicker than I even feared that it would. Come on, turn over. Like that. See, the thing is, the reason why I'm backing them on themselves like this is because I want to be able to choose at the end which side I want to be the top. So I'm making it so that both the underside and the top side of this clay looks roughly the same. There we go. Twist that around, that looks right there. If you're certain that you've only got one side that you want to worry about, then it makes it all even easier. See, I'm taking a stripy outside
To see the vertical stripes developing.
and put them like that, so there's that swirly orange pattern all the way around. So let's put that in there. Right. Let's take that off the end here. Sorry, my conversation skills are rubbish today, it would seem.
Says, then there is a fancy short sleeve BE top and the long sleeve one. P kit's going to cost 3 times as much as the main uniform.
This is all quite actually strangely new information to me. I'm pretty shocked that there is this level of outfits required for a PE kit.
Hedgehog says, that's ridiculous, Artie. Which school is that?
It's possibly every school's got this. But yeah, having children, it's just so much more expensive these days. I know money is worth different than it was when I was a kid, but I'm sure it just costs more compared to your actual income. And I am astonished by Christmas presents from my nephews. You can't give a kid £10 for Christmas presents. There's so few things they can buy for 10 quid.
Said, at least we don't have to get a blazer. Very Hedgehog said, that would really push the price up.
Isn't a blazer just a jacket? Shows you how much I know about school uniforms. Why can't they let you just pick a jacket? Now, it makes very little sense to me, all of this, and luckily the closest I get to any of it is I've got nephews, which isn't close at all, thankfully. But I think I might be one of those mums that the school is really annoyed with, that's always complaining about something. So I think the whole world is probably happy that I'm not doing the kid thing.
Very Hedgehog says, Carly, it's a jacket with a badge. A special expensive badge. Artie says, yes, and an exact colour, style and fabric with the school badge. Very Hedgehog says, it's a rip-off.
It all sounds like a rip-off, but then the amount of times my sisters have got to find an entire outfit to dress their kid up for some, what is it, there's book day, there's something to do with history day, I don't know, I lost track of it all. But I'm constantly seeing things about costumes needed in schools. I don't remember ever having that kind of thing going on when I was at school, but then I was at an East End of London school, which is quite a poorish neighbourhood. I know London earns a lot of money, but back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't full of rich people like it is now. It was actually full of poorer people, and schooling was a bit rough, let's put it that way. Right, we filled that up. There's lots of little spaces. That's fine. So what you do, find something you want to fill in the gaps with. I'm just going to use a bit of scrappy clay and just take off pinches and push it into the gaps. And that'll do fine. Try not to overlap the top side of any of your canes, because you'll miss that bit of the picture. The clay is hard to take off if you smudge it onto the top. So it's better to put a little bit in and have to add more than put too much and it just splooges over the whole thing. If that makes sense. It looks so busy on the screen. I've just turned sideways. It really does. You will find, if you're not so worried about the image being maintained, if you roll it out at this stage, it will fill the gaps in itself, but you will find that it sort of stretches at the edges to fill in those gaps, and that will affect what the outcome looks like. I'm not saying it's wrong missing this stage. I'm just saying know what you're doing. If it don't matter, then it don't matter. Don't cause yourself more work than you actually need.
The primary he just left recently revamped their uniform and introduced ridiculously priced kilts and pinafores for the girls.
Kilts?
Budget option for the poor, plain navy. So sexist as well as elitist now.
Holy moly, that's not really what I want the next generation to be dealing with. But I mean, we've already caused them enough trouble with having Boris as a new Prime Minister. He's going to be causing trouble that they're going to be sorting out for years into their adult lives. I warn you.
That is looking fabulous, Carly.
Thank you. I'm just filling in gaps. I know it's a little bit boring, but this would have taken just 10 times as long if I'd done it the proper way. It really just does take forever. But it's what they do with stained glass in. They will start from one side and build sideways. And that's really what you're doing, but it's far easier than with stained glass. I have made a stained glass window before, and the thing is, you've got all the little shards of glass that you can see, but you've got glass dust. And I remember getting my finger and doing that across my hand and it causing a cut, because you can't even see the dust that's on your hands, but it's enough to cut you. So yeah, I think stained glass was not going to be right for me. I'm too clumsy. But it's good to try as many different crafts as you can, because you will settle on what's right for you. Where did that go? There we go. Don't mind me just waffling on. Right. You know, in the Pacific Ocean there is that massive garbage patch. Well, they've actually sent scientists out and conservationists and that sort of thing. They've removed 40 tons of plastic and netting. And I know I'm going to be shot in the foot by people because this is not popular. There's a massive thing about not using plastic straws. And I agree, they're not good when they get into wildlife. They can cause a lot of problems. But they're not the biggest problem with plastic in the water. By far, the worst problem we've got is fishing nets. They're causing far more problems than any other form of plastic.
I would love to do some glass work, but the dust and bits are a worry.
Yeah, you've got to keep washing your hands, keep sweeping down surfaces, or ideally have a hoover it up. It's a very interesting substance, glass, because it has properties like water. If you run your glass cutter across it, you can't go back over that cut. You'll never find that line again, and it slightly moves. You have to be very, very sure each cut you do. The lead work is fun. It's like a very big jigsaw puzzle. They have different shaped edge pieces depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that ain't going to be happening, so I best just forget that idea.
There are a lot simpler crafts out there. My big issue is where I'm kind of clumsy. I found it too easy to have my hand jog when I'm trying to work, or accidentally drop things. It's hard to store. It's heavy.
But glass is so beautiful.
It really is. And you can do stuff with glass in polymer clay. It does lend itself to be mounted, especially if you put tin foil on the back. It really makes it very reflective. One of the things I like to do is, the little cheap glass pebbles you can get from every pound store, and eBay's awash with the things. Use those and just push them into raw clay. Just make sure that the sides are covered up enough that it holds them in, and if they do fall out, then just epoxy them in once you baked it. Right, 2 more, and then this is all the gappy bits are filled. Oh, I've just spotted a few that I missed. I must have missed this line. It was my fault for saying I've only got 2 more left. The universe went, yeah, right. I'll show you, trying to be that definite. There we go. Now I've got 2 more. Right. So all the gaps are filled. You've got a rough sheet. So.
That's an idea, thanks.
Yeah. I love mixed media. If you totally forget about your super glue and get to working with 2-part epoxy, it suddenly makes it all far better. It holds. If you're interested on the tips and tricks for 2-part epoxy, I've got a video on my YouTube channel. Right, now there's a couple of things you can do. You can either get deli wrap, which is like this. It's thicker than cling film, but still quite thin. The positives of using this as the top sheet is you can see through it and you can make sure it's smoothed out properly. But it does mean you go in and get in a whole different roll of stuff. So I am just going to show you how to do it with paper. Now, first stage, make sure your paper's flat and you're just starting to push it on. And you can see where there's air bubbles and they need to be pulled out. So I'm going to start off with a rolling pin. And you don't want to go all in one direction because the images will start to smudge into that direction. So what we got over here, let me see, can I find the packet it came from? This shows me in my pre-planning. 2 seconds, I'll have a look. There is something that Lakeland does. I can't find its box. Joy. Lakeland does it. I will, after I've finished, I'll put a link on the bottom of this video tomorrow for it, yeah? It's £5 a roll and it's the same thing as the American deli wrap. The other thing you can use is, you know, the bags that they put vegetables in? They, in the supermarket, cut them open. I mean, it's extra faff, but you can. Can you see some of the, when it sticks down, you can see it clearly through the paper. Where there's air bubbles, you can see it's cloudy. So the first stage, we're trying to get rid of all the air bubbles. Now, the technical term for this is burnishing. Basically rubbing a lot with something. I've found my best burnishing tool is one of these. They are called metal soaps. You can get them off of eBay, Amazon, most sort of bric-a-brac shops sells them. What they're designed for is when you've been prepping garlic and onions, washing your hands with this is supposed to strip the smell out. May work. What I use it for is I like the smooth flatness of it, and the fact that it's slightly curved means that if you've got an angle, you really can get up and still rub into the corners. But if you've not got a metal soap, anything smooth that you've got, so if you've got a marble, that will work. It's got less space, it will take you a lot longer, but it will work. Or a tumbled stone, or a glass paperweight, or stone eggs. A lot of people have got these knocking around. Something smooth is what you want. And what you're going to do is you're going over in little circles. Spoon will do it, although I do find that sometimes the handle can get in your way a bit. But I know people who have got a spoon and cut the handle off with a pair of tin snips, and that's what they use. But I like the fact this has got a big flat area. So can you see I'm doing little circles? Make sure you don't give yourself a paper cut on the edges. Done that enough times. And you just going over until you see that all the paper's stuck down. There's not any dips. And if it's too uneven, get your rolling pin back out and go back over. This takes a little bit of time, and it's worth doing because it's easier to do on the flat than it is once you put it on the box. So going that way, turn it around. And the reason for the paper or the plastic wrap is what it's doing is it's holding the image in that shape where it's sticking to it. The vacuum helps you to not distort it. If I was to roll this and burnish it without anything on top, it would start to spread out, and that will completely ruin your look. You may end up with something that's really nice, but it won't be what you planned. So if that happens, tell people that's what you are aiming for, because looking good is better than chucking it away because it's not what you thought when you've picked up your clay. If you knew how many of the things, not only things that are in my shop, but things that I've sold that looked nothing like I planned them to when I first picked up my clay. There is a saying I go by: good is better than perfect, because it's done. If you're holding out for perfect before you actually get something out there, you're going to wait a long time. Can you see it's starting to smooth, but there it's still got that air bubble, so still got more work to do on it. These edges I will be using my blade to push them so that they're flat, so don't worry about that. Just keep working the clay. Now the reason why I'm not lifting it up and showing you what it's like so far is you can, if you don't lay the paper back down completely in exactly the same place it was in, you will get colour smudging. So you're better off keeping the final reveal for the end. And it's difficult because you want to look, but you've got to hold off and get it right. There we go, that's come back through. I find it quite therapeutic doing this because I love watching the colour come through the paper, and the pickiness of my eye will spot. Yeah, the thing is, it's really easy to go through lots and lots of greaseproof paper. I will even wipe a bit down that I've used. So this bit of paper, once I've used it for this clay, I'll wipe it down and let it dry and then reuse it for another bit of clay, and I'll use it a couple of times at least before I throw it away. I really do try to not create waste if I can help it. This is mostly there. Good enough, I would say. I think one last rolling pin over just to smooth out a few bumps that I felt. Now I know some people put theirs through their pasta machine. I think you're taking a risk at distorting it. If you're gonna try going down that path, I would suggest you practice on a few bits where you don't mind it going wrong until you got the technique, because it does push it so firmly. There we go. I reckon that's there. Now you want to bring the paper right the way back and peel like that. If you just pull, it can pull off chunks. It's more likely to snag and give you problems. So what we're doing is we're just rolling it back like that. There we go. And that sheet now is fully smoothed. So Next stage, turn it over on itself. Because that side's free, we need to free up the bottom. And same again, roll the paper back on itself and then drag it either towards you or away from you, it doesn't matter. There we go. Smooth sheet. So I put this out the way and I'm going to get the box back. At this stage you can cut it up and use it however you want, but where I've measured it to fit across this, it should, that's what we're going to use this one for. It's slightly bigger.
Wow.
Yeah, awesome, huh? I've already scored the plastic, the chipboard, that's the word I'm looking for. Already scored the chipboard so that it's more likely to stick to that surface, and I'm just going to give it gentle squeezes to get all the air out and push it into the shape that I want. And I'm folding the edges under so that it fits properly. Now you want to try and make sure you don't trap air under your sheet. If you're particularly worried, roll it on, instead of plonking it straight, put it on one side and then lay it down so that the air pushes through. Now I found this side is just a little bit too long since rolling it out. If you push on it, it starts to become thicker and come in, so you can make it fit. Because your clay is so flexible, you can just flatten it along that side to make it fit. Right, so just working this last corner and then that will be on. I might trim along there actually. I think it's going to look a bit weird if I don't. But you can do that. This is the good thing about baking the sides. Whoop, left a score mark. I can sort that out though, just keep smushing and you'll be there. There we go, join that back up, done. Right, so what do you think? And that's out of all the clay that was scrappy and technically the fouled stuff. With the rest of the box, it looks really good. And I know it's got a line across the bottom there. You can smooth it in. You can cut it down, because raw clay you can smooth to join onto baked clay so you can't see the join line. It does take a bit of fiddling. You just use your thumb and you push it in. But that's going to take a bit of work. But there we go. So you've got a pattern sheet. And I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. I hope you've all enjoyed watching me do it. And I hope you all have a really great week. Okay, I'm going to see you all next week. Bye.